Here are the top stories for today, March 8, 2022. President Rodrigo Duterte appeals to the next administration to honor the country's commitment to the joint oil exploration with China, saying he does not want the Philippines to be embroiled in a conflict. The Energy Department assures there is no oil supply problem in the country in the midst of skyrocketing prices seen to produce a domino effect on the prices of basic goods and other commodities. The chief executive wants the continuity of good COVID-19 control practices by the next government. The Philippines is also gearing up for the fourth massive vaccination drive as part of sustaining the gains against the pandemic. And the Philippines joins the world in recognizing the role of women in nation building and development of society in observance of International Women's Day. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. President Rodrigo Duterte has appointed a new chief and two commissioners of the Commission on Elections. In a press briefing today, PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar confirmed the appointment of Saidamen Balt Pangarungan as ad interim chairperson of the poll body. Pangarungan previously served as Secretary of the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos. Meanwhile, George Erwin Garcia and Amy Torrefrancia Neri are appointed as ad interim COMELEC commissioners, replacing retired commissioners Rowena Guanzon and Antonio Co. Jr. President Rodrigo Duterte says he does not want the Philippines to be involved in any conflict amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine and China's claims in Taiwan. In his talk to the people last night, the president says to avoid a possible conflict with China, the next administration must honor the country's commitment to the proposed joint oil exploration with China in the West Philippine Sea. He said although the Philippines and China may not be able to have a peaceful resolution to the sea row during his administration, what mattered now is to remain calm amid the crisis. The Philippines and China have not yet reached an agreement when it comes to joint exploration activities for oil and gas at the diplomatically strained sea. Philippine and Chinese officials are still in the process of fleshing out possible details of any joint exploration venture.
So, alam mo, yan ang iniiwasan ko noon pa eh. Tapos magkagayra tuloy tayo dito, nandoon sa Ukraine, nandyan yung Taiwan, gustong agawin uli ng China, tapos dito, so many flashpoints, maraming lugar na may putok. We do not need it. Hindi natin kailangan makipag-away dyan. Sundin lang ninyo kung ano yung pinag-usapan noon. Honor yan eh. It's a matter of honor. We gave our consensual talks, tapos may written agreement. Pag iniba yan, delikado. So, hindi na mangyari sa akin yan kasi ayaw kong ibahin. Kasi yun ang pinag-usapan namin sa panahon ko. Yun lang, just to remind everybody to stay cool, to chill ka lang. It's not our generation na masosolve natin itong problema sa China. I don't know what the future holds, but I said at this time, relax lang tayo.
Meanwhile, President Duterte said he is considering calling for a special session of Congress to discuss the recommendations of his economic team to mitigate the impact of the Russia-Ukraine crisis on the Philippine economy.
To shift to alert level 1 at the soonest possible time for the entire country and open all the schools for face-to-face learning to increase our domestic economy and offset the external risk. To increase fuel subsidy program for public utility vehicles from the already announced 2.5 billion to 5 billion. So we will double the subsidy. And the first tranche will be given in March and the second tranche in April. Is to increase our buffer stock of petroleum from the current 30 to 45 days. To provide additional fuel vouchers for agricultural producers, and we will increase the budget from 500 million to 1.1 billion. The first tranche we will give in March, the second tranche in April.
The Department of Energy assures the public that the Philippines has enough supply of fuel products. During a fuel crisis ad hoc committee hearing at the House of Representatives, Energy Undersecretary Gerardo Erguiza said the fuel crisis problem lies with the rising prices. On the issue of subsidy for the transport sector, LTFRB Chairman Martin Delgra said the 2.5 billion pesos fuel subsidy program is already in place and just needs funds to be downloaded from the Department of Budget and Management. Meanwhile, House Ways and Means Committee Chair Joey Salceda reminded the panel there is a legal framework to subsidize not just the jeepney operators, but also the UV Express, taxis, tricycles, and habal-habal. Salceda also said an estimated 75.2 billion pesos in revenue from value-added tax and oil excise could be used to alleviate the current crisis. He proposed another option, which is the Katas ng Train package, similar to the Arroyo administration's Katas ng VAT program. House Committee on Economic Affairs Chair Representative Sharon Garin said, while the incessant oil price hike for the past 2 months is inevitable due to the ongoing geopolitical tensions, the government is working towards finding solutions to help cushion the impact of the crisis. The panel would also recommend in their report to conduct a special session in light of the current fuel crises. The Department of Trade and Industry and other government agencies are looking for ways to ensure enough supply and stable prices amid rising oil prices. In a Laging Handa briefing, Trade and Industry Undersecretary Ruth Castello said the department is looking into stockpiling of frozen pork and chicken from local sources.
No, Yusek, we encourage that mag-stockpile. Actually, pinag-uusapan namin na dito sa DTI na kung pwede na tayong mag-stockpile ng agricultural products like yung frozen pork at frozen meat, mga imported siya, and chicken. Marami tayong poultry supply dito, pero pwede tayo nang mag-umpisang mag-stockpile. For manufactured food products naman, Yusek, ang supply inventory kasi ang stock inventory kasi ng retailers and manufacturers natin would last for like between 30 to 90 days. So iba-ibang produkto yan, merong 35 days, may 45 days, may 60 days, abot hanggang 90. So far, kung impact ng presyo ng fuel ang pag-uusapan natin, especially because of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, hindi pa po siya dapat makaapekto dun sa mga existing inventory na natin.
Moreover, Castello assures prices and supply of basic necessities and prime commodities in the country are stable amid the circulating price hike rumors.
Yung mga products covered under the Price Act, USEC, ang Department of Health, ang Essential Medicine, ang Department of Agriculture, lahat ng agricultural products, whether fresh or frozen, sa DTI po, manufactured food products at meron ding mga ilan na non-food. Ang mga basic natin, tinapay, kasama yan coffee, processed milk, kasama ang instant noodles, kasama ang canned sardines. Ang prime commodities natin are canned meat, kasama rin ang kandila, even detergent soap, USEC, kasama yan as prime commodity. So, itong mga produkto na to, yung talagang binabantayan natin sa DTI.
The House of Representatives is looking at all possible options to cushion the impacts of rising oil prices. Speaker Lord Alan Velasco said the Congress is on standby in the event President Rodrigo Duterte calls for a special session in suspending or reducing fuel excise taxes. Velasco said he expects the Fuel Crisis Ad Hoc Committee to fully assess the economic impact of the drastic increase in oil prices and come up with recommendations on how the government can address the problem at the soonest possible time. 3 groups of Filipino evacuees from war-torn Ukraine along with their dependents arrived in Manila on Sunday, March 6. The Department of Foreign Affairs said the latest arrivals came from the capital city of Kyiv and other areas in the western part of Ukraine. The first group, consisting of 4 Filipino adults, 3 Filipino-Ukrainian children with their 3 Ukrainian mothers, arrived in the afternoon via a Qatar Airlines flight. The second group of 2 Filipino adults, a Filipino-Ukrainian child and his Ukrainian mother, arrived in the evening. Meanwhile, the third group consists of 3 Filipinos who arrived in Manila on their own arrangements. The Philippine Honorary Consulate General in Kyiv assisted the evacuees in traveling from Kyiv to the western Ukrainian city of Lviv, while the Philippine Embassy in Warsaw provided for their transportation, accommodation, and meals. The embassy also made arrangements for their travel documents and visas, RT-PCR tests, and their eventual flights to Manila. Meanwhile, Russia says it would declare a temporary ceasefire in the Ukrainian cities of Kyiv, Mariupol, Kharkiv, and Sumy to ensure evacuations of civilians. According to a statement by the Interdepartmental Coordination Center for Humanitarian Response in Ukraine, the humanitarian conditions in these Ukrainian cities have extremely deteriorated. The humanitarian corridor will be monitored via unmanned aerial vehicles. Russia demands that Ukraine fulfill all conditions for the creation of humanitarian corridors in specified directions and ensure the organized exit of civilians as well as foreign nationals. The UN Refugee Agency says more than 1.5 million people have fled Ukraine to neighboring countries. The French Navy has expressed willingness to work with its Philippine counterparts at sea. In his courtesy call to Philippine Navy Chief Vice Admiral Adeluis Bordado, Rear Admiral Jean-Mathieu Ray of the French Armed Forces in the Asia-Pacific said they are ready to work with the Philippine forces at sea. Ray also stressed the need to protect and defend the freedom of navigation in the Philippine waters, including the West Philippine Sea. Among the highlights of the visit were talks on maritime security, protection of natural resources at sea, and possible future exercise engagements. More provinces highlight the importance of women through various projects in line with the celebration of Women's Month. The details from Laid Cabagani.
In La Union, a government-owned drug treatment facility is eyeing the establishment of a residential program for women patients by the last quarter of the year. This will be at the San Fernando La Union Treatment and Rehabilitation Center. Chief Administrative Officer Raymond Basbas said once the dormitory is finished, it can cater to over 100 residential female patients. Basbas said residential clients undergo therapeutic community programs for 6 to 12 months and aftercare monitoring for 18 months. He further urged those struggling with addiction to undergo rehabilitation. Meanwhile, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao launched its 5 fatwa or religious rulings on gender-based violence. The Bangsamoro Darul Ifta and Bangsamoro Women Commission officially signed the religious rulings that focus on violence against women, wife desertion and abandonment, husband forcing sexual relations with his wife, rape, and human trafficking. In Legazpi City, Albay, at least 100 officers and members of their Women's Federation were trained on making liniment oil and balm. This is part of the livelihood programs of the local government aimed at giving their members additional knowledge that they can use to increase their daily income. After the training, women were also given vegetable seedlings and fertilizers for their backyard gardening. President Rodrigo Duterte meanwhile joins the country in celebrating International Women's Day. He says he is proud of the Philippines' distinction as a shining beacon of gender equality and women empowerment in the world. He urges everyone to come together in building a country where no one is left behind and everyone has the capacity to succeed. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Laid Cabagani.
The United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF, lauded the Philippine government for passing a law increasing the age of sexual consent from 12 years old to 16 years old. This means making sexual activity with those below 16 are now considered statutory rape. President Rodrigo Duterte signed Republic Act 116481, or the Special Protection of Children Against Abuse, Exploitation and Discrimination Act, on Friday. UNICEF Philippines Representative Oyun Saikan Dev Norov congratulated the Philippine government for the legislative milestone, saying the passage of this legislation is an essential step towards fulfilling children's rights to protection from sexual violence, abuse, and exploitation, regardless of their sex, orientation, and gender identity and expression. She also lauded both chambers of the House of Representatives for heeding strong evidence and creating a more robust child protection legal framework. Still to come, the Philippines targets to inoculate another 1.8 million people in the 4th Bayanihan Bakunahan Drive. And the Labor Department says the law on a 4-day work week is now up to the next Congress. Details ahead. Keep it here on the PNA Newsroom. President Rodrigo Duterte on Monday urged the next administration to adopt the good practices that are currently being implemented by the government in the fight against COVID-19. Duterte made this remark after Health Secretary Francisco Duque III attributed the decrease in COVID-19 infections in the country to vaccination, natural immunity, and compliance with minimum public health standards. The president said, in case another health crisis happens in the future, the country's current practices may come in handy. Duterte thanked disciplined Filipinos for helping bring COVID-19 cases down by getting vaccinated and observing health protocols. He also expressed appreciation for the decorum adopted by law enforcers in implementing rules. Last month, Duterte said, seeing the majority of the Filipino population fully vaccinated will make him happy when he steps down from office. He urged the residents of various areas that are still lagging in their vaccination drive to avail of the free jabs. The government is targeting to administer up to 1.8 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines in the 4th National Vaccination Day from March 10 to 12. The Philippines received on Monday over 3.9 million doses of Pfizer vaccines on Monday from the U.S. government through the COVAX facility. National Task Force Against COVID-19 consultant Maria Paz Corrales reiterated the government's target to inoculate 70 million Filipinos by March and a total of 90 million by June. She also encouraged the public to get their booster shots. She added that focus will be given to senior citizens since they are more vulnerable to the virus. Corrales also reminded the public not to forget the vaccination for those 5 to 11 years of age, as well as those aged 12 and above. The Department of Health, meanwhile, said 70% of the country's target population has been vaccinated against COVID-19. In its latest case bulletin, the DOH also reported 74.2% of the senior citizens have been inoculated against the disease. For the period from March 1 to 7, the DOH logged 6,297 new cases, while the average daily cases for the recent week is 899, or 30% lower than the new infections reported on February 22nd to 28. As for the deaths due to COVID-19, the DOH reported 615 fatalities from March 1 to 7. 4 cities in Luzon have been classified as very low risk for COVID-19. These are cities with negative growth rates in new infections. The Octa Research Group identified the 4 highly urbanized cities as Angeles in Pampanga, Dagupan in Pangasinan, Lucena in Quezon, and Olongapo in Zambales. Aside from lower growth rates, attack rates and the number of cases in these 4 cities are lower as well. The healthcare utilization rate of the 4 cities is also classified as very low, ranging from only 1% to 19%. Meanwhile, Metro Manila, Baguio City, Naga City, and Santiago were at low risk. Puerto Princesa remained at moderate risk due to the very high testing positivity rate. 4 areas in Cebu province may be placed under alert level 1 as more elderly Cebuanos there are able to get vaccinated against COVID-19. More on this and other news from the provinces from Chris Crismundo.
4 out of 9 local government units in Metro Cebu are qualified for the escalation of quarantine restrictions for its high vaccination rate among senior citizens. Mandaue City reported a 91% vaccination rate, Minglanilla 80%, Talisay City 77%, and Cordova 73%. Under Alert Level 1, indoor-outdoor events are allowed at a total capacity and everyone can have intra-zonal and inter-zonal travels consistent with minimum public health standards. Region 7's Bohol, Cebu Province, Cebu City, Lapu-Lapu City, Mandaue City, and Negros Oriental are under Alert Level 2 until March 15. Meanwhile, the Department of Health in Bicol Region is sure it can reach its target to inoculate over 138,000 children under the government's routine immunization program against vaccine-preventable diseases in the region. Dr. Monray Isaiah Mansilla, Regional Medical Coordinator, said the dedication and hard work of health workers as well as the help of local government units boosted their goal to immunize more children. He encouraged parents to take advantage of the immunization programs given by the agency and make sure to complete vaccines needed to boost their children's health. In Negros Oriental, the number of COVID-19 cases has dropped to a significant low level from a surge early this year, despite the province being tagged as a poor performer in its vaccination rollout for senior citizens. Assistant Provincial Health Officer Dr. Leland Estacion said, despite this development, the province will remain under Alert Level 2 unless it can reach its vaccination target for senior citizens. The province's target for A2 sector or senior citizens is 133,000. Estacion said unless the Interagency Task Force will change their guidelines on community quarantine classifications, there is no chance for Negros Oriental to be under Alert Level 1. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Mundo.
The Department of Labor and Employment said the passage of a law enforcing a 4-day work week is now up to the next Congress. Labor Assistant Secretary Maria Teresita Cucueco said the 4-day work week has issues that need to be checked alongside the labor code. She hopes that the next Congress will tackle the proposal. Back in 2017, the House of Representatives approved House Bill 6152, which will allow employees to have a compressed 4-day work week.
Yusek, actually, ang Senate at ang Congress ay nagkaroon na ng mga hearings tungkol dito. Hindi lang ho siguro na nabigyan kasi marami hong mga detalye dito sa 4-day work week na kailangan din natin tingnan maigi. Dahil sa labor code, may mga guidelines ho tayo sa the work that must be done. So, pero naisulong na po ito yung mga proposal for this work. And let us see in the next Congress kung may batas na ho na mangyayari tungkol dito po.
Up next, it's the turn of some Bicolanos to greet a brighter future through the Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa program. And the Civil Service Commission has a new chairperson. We're back after a quick break. Stay with the PNA Newsroom.
Nais mo bang bumalik at magsimula ng panibagong buhay sa inyong probinsya? May solusyon dyan. Bisitahin ang balikprobinsya.ph upang mag-apply. Pero ano nga ba ang Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa program o mas kilala bilang BP2? Ang programang ito ay binuo ng gobyerno mula sa EO 114 na naglalayong matugunan ang lumulobong populasyon at pagsikip ng mga residential area sa NCR. Layunin rin ng BP2 na makapagbigay ng pantay na oportunidad sa mga Pilipinong magbabalik probinsya. Ligtas at libre kang makakabalik sa inyong probinsya sa tulong ng BP2. May kasama pang tulong pinansyal at oportunidad para makapagsimula ng pangkabuhayan. Bagong pag-asa ang hatid ng Balik Probinsya program. Kaya naman ano pang hinihintay mo? Mag-register na sa balikprobinsya.ph.
Tired of renting in Manila all her life with her meager earnings, a massage therapist has availed of the Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa program to go back to Albay with her 81-year-old mother and 2 children. Marita Moahe has the story.
31 individuals consisting of 7 families will finally be able to go back to their home province in Bicol after months of waiting as the Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa program resumes dispatch. On Monday, the beneficiaries bound for Albay arrived at the BP2 depot in Agham Road in Quezon City to have their COVID-19 swab test and undergo dispatch procedures. This is to make sure that they are negative of COVID-19 before they are sent back to Bicol. Feka Mata Vinoya, 47 years old, says she is going home to the province with her 81-year-old mother and her 2 children. She said that he has grown tired of renting a house in the city all her life.
Kung wala pa naman kaming lupa o yung sakahan, baka mag-aano kami ng mga yung mga sangla na lupa, kami mag-aano. Tapos doon kami magtatanim. Tapos kung pwede makuha sa kalahati o sa pagbebenta ng pakwan, doon namin ipupul yung bayad. At least kahit pa paano, may masasabi kaming amin na pinaghirapan talaga namin. At least hindi na kami po mangungupahan doon sa amin.
She said that she can finally be able to look after her old mother and her daughter without worrying every time she leaves for work, like their case in Manila. She said that whatever and however she strives here, they really can't improve their life because a big part of her meager salary as a massage therapist is spent for house rent, and whatever is left is spent for food and other needs. While she has little knowledge about planting, Vinoya is hopeful that the government can help her acquire the skills. Upon settling in Albay, Vinoya said she would get into planting fruits like watermelon on their land.
May programa na naman po na yung magti-training ka.
Okay.
Ayun po. Yun po rin yung inaasahan namin na matuturuan din kami ng mas maganda. Kung ano po yung namin, yung gusto namin negosyo, kung anong gusto namin na maging sa probinsya, pwede daw naman po namin ma-avail yun.
The BP2 program is an initiative of the national government created to address the congestion in Metro Manila's urban areas. Government agencies guide the beneficiaries throughout this transition by providing additional support and incentives on transportation, livelihood, family needs, subsistence, education, housing, and others. For the PNA Newsroom, I am Marita Muaje.
The Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, has granted emergency employment assistance to some 711 informal sector workers in Negros Occidental affected by Typhoon Odette. DOLE 6 Director Sixto Rodriguez has directed the field offices to fast-track the emergency employment assistance through the TUPAD, or Tulong Panghanap Buhay sa Ating Disadvantaged or Displaced Workers. Each beneficiary received 3,950 pesos in total wages for a 10-day work, such as clearing of typhoon-hit areas plus insurance coverage. Rodriguez said the wages can be used by the workers to buy materials to repair their homes or for their basic needs. Aside from providing emergency assistance to Typhoon Odette victims, the agency is also implementing the TUPAD and other programs for qualified and deserving members of the informal sector. The Presidential Communications Operations Office, or PCOO, has officially launched its own anti-corruption committee to curb corruption within its agencies. The PCOO announced its partnership with the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission to create its own ACC under the government's project Kasangga Aksyon Laban sa Korupsyon. The public may reach the agency's Complaint Action Center through a hotline, help desk, or email. The ACC was also tasked to coordinate with agencies, bureaus, and other instrumentalities to implement and promote anti-corruption measures, policies, and programs. PCOO Undersecretary for Administration and Legal Affairs Marvin Gatpayat chair the ACC, while Assistant Secretary for Media Relations Florentino Loyola Jr. will serve as Vice Chair. Gatpayat expressed confidence that the partnership between the PCOO and PACC would help elevate the fight against corruption. PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar meanwhile enjoined PCOO officials and members to play part in contributing to social and political change and reform. Acting Presidential Spokesperson Carlo Nograles has been named chairperson of the Civil Service Commission. CSC Commissioner Eileen Lizada earlier confirmed Nograles' appointment. Malacanang has yet to release Nograles' appointment papers. A live stream from state-run RTVM showed Nograles' oath-taking as CSC chair before President Rodrigo Duterte at Malacanang Palace. Nograles replaced Alicia de la Rosa Bala, who retired on February 2nd at the end of her 7-year term. If his appointment is confirmed, he will be CSC chairperson until 2029. Nograles co-chairs the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases and chairs the Task Force on Zero Hunger. He is also Vice President of PDP Laban, which Duterte chairs. The new government center in Lambunao is expected to set the standard for environment-friendly infrastructure in Iloilo Province. The 67 million peso government center contains so-called green components which help save energy, block off direct sunlight, and provide natural ventilation and lighting to reduce carbon footprint. The two-story building also has a roof deck that allows for a majestic view of Lambunao. The government center was conceptualized in 2016 and was completed on February 22 and inaugurated on Friday. Former mayor and now board member Jason Gonzalez said the people were involved in the designing and construction. He said the features and the glass walls in the building's interior signify transparency, respect for their contributions to the community, and an understanding of inclusiveness in governance. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. President Rodrigo Duterte appeals to the next administration to honor the country's commitment to the joint oil exploration with China, saying he does not want the Philippines to be embroiled in a conflict. The Energy Department assures there is no oil supply problem in the country in the midst of skyrocketing prices seen to produce a domino effect on the prices of basic goods and other commodities. The chief executive wants the continuity of good COVID-19 control practices by the next government. The Philippines is also gearing up for the fourth massive vaccination drive as part of sustaining the gains against the pandemic. And the Philippines joins the world in recognizing the role of women in nation building and development of society in observance of International Women's Day. As Filipinos, we all have a vital role to play in preventing the spread of COVID-19. So remember, wear your face masks and face shields, wash your hands often, practice safe physical distancing, go out only for essential reasons, and get vaccinated as soon as possible to protect ourselves, our families, and the community. Together, we can beat COVID-19. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. For more news content, check our webpage or log on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day, everyone.